All right, so I've given you a ton of information already. How to identify those first sponsors and how to calculate your overall reach. Let's actually look at a practical example and how I recommend finding those sponsors. So, finding sponsors. First of all, I think that you should really, like I said in the first video, use your contact list and network. You want to leverage the people that you have personal relationships with. And, I don't want that to sound like it's like you're using people, right? I'm definitely not saying use people, but I think that you've built these relationships and you can lean on those because there are people who already know, like, and trust you, and they are more likely to sponsor your work than people who don't. You can also leverage LinkedIn to find partnership managers or influencer marketing managers. My friend Justin Moore has he calls it the magic query, where you would search for the brand's name and then, like, you would Google, if we're trying to find Nike, we'll say Nike influencer marketing manager LinkedIn, and then more often than not that'll lead you to the right person's LinkedIn account. So you want to actually find a real person, and I think this is really important to state. Don't just email press at whatever or contact at whatever. Find a real person to talk to. You can really make an impression, right? And so find that person, and then you can use a tool like hunter.io to actually find their email address. Now, if you don't have people in your immediate network, the thing that I did early on was look for companies sponsoring things in my space. So, sponsoring other podcasts, YouTube videos, or events. I always was able to kind of say, hey, you're sponsoring this event for $20,000 and it's going to last 2 days. What about for $10,000, you sponsor my podcast for 6 months, right? And that worked really well early on, but that's cold pitching at this point. So I really want to impress upon you that you should try to find people in your network first. You want to cut to the quick in the email. Like I said in an earlier video, don't say like, oh my gosh, I love your product and I have so many downloads. You want to tell them how you're going to help them achieve your goal. And again, I know I keep mentioning my friend Justin, but he has this thing called the rope pitch, where you basically say like, hey, I saw on YouTube you were talking about this. I also talk about that, right? And so I'd love to work with you to help you achieve your goals. You want to keep track of who you're reaching out to and don't take anything personally, right? So as you start to reach out to people, just know that it's going to be mostly no's, but you want to try to get those yeses. And I think the fastest way to a yes is someone in your personal network. When it comes to pricing, your pricing and offer is basically up to you at this point. I would say that you should try experimenting with stuff, but calculating your overall reach and determining the number that works best for you, right? If you do client work, you're not worried about the number of people who will see the thing you're doing for the client, right? You're more worried about delivering value, and you price based on that value. A brand deal, a podcast sponsorship can be the same way, right? If their goal is to have you talk about them for 6 months because they think it'll raise awareness for their product, that is a lot of value that you can provide. You are the only you. So I would say experiment. Like I said, the first one, maybe try, if it's just a podcast sponsorship, somewhere in the range of 50 to $100 for a mention on 4 episodes or a mention on an episode. $100 per episode, whatever you're most comfortable with starting out. So I want to share examples from my pitch deck. We'll talk about pitch decks later, but a brand that I won't name the brands, but a brand I recently pitched, I had a direct connection with for a while, and they moved on. And so I asked them to put me in contact with the new person, the new point of contact, and I pitched them. So here's a pitch. Here's some of the information that I included in that pitch. First of all, my download stats. I say I'm in the top 1 to 2% of all podcasts, depending on who you ask. I usually get 5,000 downloads per episode. This number has gone down since Apple Podcasts has changed things, but within the first 30 days or first 60 days is the number you're looking for there. And generally I would get about 20,000. I get about 20,000 downloads per month. And then my overall reach. So across other places, right? I have a newsletter. This is older. I have almost 1,800 subscribers now. So 1,800 subscribers, 40% open rate. I have a YouTube channel that had 2,900 subscribers when I pitched, And then on socials, when I was on Twitter and LinkedIn, I had over 11,000 people across those channels. So wanted to include those because the packages included each of those aspects, right? So package one, I didn't even pitch a podcast sponsorship in this one, right? I knew the brand, I knew what their goals were, which is another really important thing, right? Some brands are going to have goals of just straight conversions. Some are going to have brand awareness or repurposing. And I knew that this brand had a client education or a customer education problem. And so the first thing I did instead of pitching just the podcast sponsorship was a video on how to use their product. So that's another thing to consider as you're pitching for potential podcast sponsorships. Maybe you do have a bigger YouTube channel and you can add in the podcast as a value add. But video on YouTube and then 2 dedicated sections in my newsletter, the investment for that, I try to use the word investment instead of price. They are investing. This is a marketing investment. The investment for that would be $1,000. And then video on YouTube, long form article, dedicated newsletter, 4 dedicated sections in the newsletter. Those are called, I call those integrations now. Add on the sidebar of the website and an article announcing the sponsorship. So this was on a new website that I was launching. And so I didn't have a lot of traffic there, which is why I gave away a lot of those for not a big increase in price, but $2,500. And then package 4 included 4 episodes of my podcast, 60-second host read baked in. I didn't talk about baked in, but when I first created this course, there was no other way to do it. But now there's the idea of selling baked in versus dynamically inserted ads. I think for you, as you're getting your first sponsors, you should focus on host read baked in ads. That's, unless you're getting hundreds of thousands or millions of downloads, baked in ads are going to serve your brand the best, and they'll allow you to price without having to worry about CPM, that pricing that we talked about in an earlier video. So baked in mid-roll ads, video, article, dedicated newsletter, things like that, investment $4,000. So these are some sample packages for you, and these slides are available. I'll make the entire, or a template, a pitch deck template available to you so you can see what one really looks like. I would say here, now that you've seen a few examples, experiment, start slow and try a few things, right? See what works and what doesn't. I was offering, integrations on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I realized, well, I left Twitter and so I'm not there anymore, but social integrations just don't work the way that they used to, in my opinion. And so now I really hammer home my YouTube channel and my podcast, which is where I've cultivated the most trust. Get feedback from your sponsors. All right. You definitely want to hear from them about what they think went well and what didn't go well, because you want to keep going to them. Get feedback from your audience because you want to make sure that you're aligned, and then do what you can to track ROI or actions on your end. Talk to each brand and make sure it's okay with them, but I like to use my own URL shortener with UTM parameters so that I can see at least how many people are clicking through to the link I'm providing in the show notes or the link that I'm saying on air. So you want to track things on your end so that you can talk about how effective the campaign is with the sponsor afterwards. And if you really do want to calculate CPM, if you're like, Joe, all of this sounds great, but I have no idea where to start, there is a link at advertisecast.com/podcast-CPM-calculator. Your impressions should be the number of downloads over a 30-day period. Podcasting is, like I said, around $25, $24 CPM. You can have that starting point, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to be worth a lot more than whatever the price it spits out at you is. So just keep that in mind. And maybe if the brand just cares about conversions, like they're like, we need to sell X number of our product, or we need X number of signups to our product, that's how we justify the price. But I try really hard not to have brand deals like that. And if you're looking at someone in your network, they're going to be a little more forgiving. They're going to want to support your work. And so I think that you can price better than the CPM. Okay, your action item. Now that you have seen some examples of how to find sponsors, how to price and package, put together your first packages and pricing. These will serve as a base for you for when you actually, for like what you actually send to the brand. Each brand is going to be different, and you really want to tailor each package to them. You don't just want to have like a stock set of packages, because if their goal is brand awareness, then that's going to be different from if their goal is conversion. If they don't have a very visual product, then maybe you don't want to put YouTube first. if they've noticed that just like newsletter integrations or dedicated newsletters do well for them, you want to tailor the package to them. But having something to start off of is generally good. You're not staring at a blank slate, and then you can tailor those to each brand that you are pitching.